would think that all of these human rights violations committed with U.S. weapons, with U.S. tax dollars, would be held accountable. And in fact, every time that Israel commits these human rights violations with U.S. weapons, it's acting in violation of our very own laws that we have on our books. The Arms Export Control Act says very explicitly that U.S. weapons can be used for one of only two purposes. Number one, for internal security, and no reasonable person can argue that Israel's military occupation of the Palestinian West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip constitutes internal security. It's a foreign military occupation. That's one permitted use. The other is for legitimate self-defense. Ask yourselves if Israel's use of these weapons is legitimate. Is it legitimate to use these weapons to colonize Palestinian land? Is it legitimate to besiege an entire population? Is it legitimate to starve and humiliate an entire people into attempted submission? Is this what members of Congress intended when they wrote the Arms Export Control Act and said that weapons could only be used for legitimate self-defense? During the Bush administration, according to the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem, Israel killed more than 3,000 innocent Palestinian civilians who took no part in hostilities, often with U.S. weapons. In addition, Israel injured, sometimes critically, often critically, thousands more innocent Palestinian civilians and destroyed billions and billions of dollars worth of Palestinian civilian infrastructure, including homes, hospitals, schools, roads, factories, agriculture, with these same U.S. weapons. We should step back and first look at this in a historical context. Since 1949, according to the Congressional Research Service, where I used to work as an analyst in Middle East affairs, the United States has provided Israel with more than $100 billion in military and economic aid, and that will increase to the $30 billion over the next decade.
If this policy that the U.S. has of supporting Israel is in violation of international law, if it's in such clear violation of human rights, how has it persisted this long?
The reason is actually pretty simple, and that's because we have a very strong set of lobbying organizations that are put in place in this country to exactly perpetuate this policy. There are dozens, if not hundreds of them. AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, is able to marshal tremendous resources to lobby for an increase in military aid to Israel. This is always their top lobbying agenda item when they come to Washington. And they just came to Washington last month and sent 7,500 people to Capitol Hill to lobby in favor of this increased military aid to Israel.
There's no lobby to counter the policies of the first lobby, and that's at least in part because the lack of knowledge and awareness in the public, because the role of the media is to reveal the facts and educate the public. Unfortunately, the U.S. mainstream media has miserably failed in doing so that the general public, who has unfortunately does not have knowledge of the issues and of what's happening on the ground and is being spoon-fed an alternative reality, is not going to do anything to change what's happening on the ground unless they know about it, because they're told the Palestinians people are evil or terrorists, and that what Israel is doing is being done for security purposes. So they can relate to that. If they are told they're innocent people being killed every day, if they're told people cannot move from and go to work or go to prayer or go to hospital, they can relate to that. If they are told people's houses get demolished every day for no reason, they can relate to that. But unfortunately, people do not have this information, and hence they do not give enough support for a counter lobby. And hence the U.S. mainstream media is either complicit in these crimes and in these acts, and they stand against U.S. values and principles, or they're just ignorant, and I don't know the exact answer, but I leave it to you.
But I believe that we have a real big problem with the media here, and the alternative media has been very receptive to our story, and Craig and I try to be available as much as we can, but the mainstream media is another challenge.